Welcome to the Clearly Podcast, Episode 1. Why Power BI isn't Excel. Recorded on the 8th of October 2020 with hosts Shailen Chudasama, Tom Goff, and myself, Andy Clark. So what we're going to talk about today is the reasons why Power BI is not Excel. Power BI is basically Excel on steroids. I can do it in Excel, so it must be possible in Power BI. Just think of Power BI as Excel and you'll be absolutely fine. And whenever I hear that, I realize I've got some work to do to go and set somebody's expectation about why Power BI is not Excel. Who wants to begin?
The one I'd probably pick up on first of all is that first quote about Power BI is just Excel on steroids. And it's an interesting quote because it's not, to my mind, entirely without merit. But I think it tends to cause people to think about Power BI in slightly the wrong way and think about it as being almost just an extension of Excel, which it's not. You've got a lot of features that exist in both Excel and Power BI. But where the real difference comes is that Power BI doesn't really do looking at line level data very well. It looks a lot better at the aggregates, and it creates a much more interactive data exploration experience.
Thing to add there is, Excel people use as databases, and they use as storage as well. So yeah, so when you how many times have you spoken to people and go, oh, we just need to store something, right? We'll just create an Excel sheet and we'll start typing. There we go, we saved it, and all of a sudden the whole company's using this one Excel sheet to store all of their travel information or expense information or anything else. And Power BI doesn't allow that storage like that because it's not designed for that. One of the clear differentiators is Power BI is an analytics tool. It's a data exploration, data analytics tool.
So what about the point then that people seem to think that if they can do something in Excel, they can do it in Power BI?
In the same way, you almost need to sort of throw out the converse to that of going, that would also lead you towards the idea of, well, if you can do it in Power BI, you should be able to do it in Excel. But these are two separate tools for two very specific reasons. And in the same way, you wouldn't want to try to put a screw into the wall using a hammer. It's far easier to do it with a screwdriver. You've got two different purposes of tools, two different tools that have their specific purposes.
Where does Excel have purpose over and above going to something which has got a bit more, I guess, discipline or robustness in, such as using Access, SQL, a proper database, which is based on, of course, rows and columns, as opposed to Excel, which is based on cells, despite the fact people think it is based on rows and columns, but it's not.
The master data store probably ought to be in a proper database system, be that a relational database like SQL, or if you want to go for something less structured, there's all options like MongoDB and things like that on the market. But all of those provide a much more sort of structured and much more disciplined form of data storage. But then they don't easily lend themselves to doing calculations on your data and doing further digging into that data. And this is where Excel still has its place hugely, is when you're actually trying to work out scenarios and things like that. We can then ingest that data into Power BI and create some visual over it and look at that in an aggregate form.
Do you ever get to a point, or have you been at a point in implementations where you try and stop a client from using Excel as their source?
It's not that we try and stop them. We can't, stop them. What we have done, and a lot of it, is to provide audits. And we did one recently, actually. So an audit where, and just helping them with, because they were storing a lot of sensitive information in Excel, and realized that storing this information, even though it's on a secure, let's say, share somewhere, but it's still accessible. They were still emailing, because that's one of the problems with Excel is It's a good tool for the application. It's been around for many years. But as soon as, just imagine, the scenario, you type in, the budget is a good example. You've typed in something, or you've typed in some information, you've got this Excel file, and then the next thing is you try to put it into a share and say, right, use this share, that's the central version, but someone will email it. And as soon as they email it, somebody else gets it, they change it. And then all of a sudden it goes around and everyone's changed it. And you've got multiple versions flying around everywhere. And then when you try and produce some kind of report, even within Excel, all of the numbers and everything you typed in may just be completely different. So which one is the actual source now? So what we try and advise is, look, Excel is good for what it's good for. But when you're trying to have that kind of central view of this or information, even if you had Power BI as that view, then there's another element of Power BI which is export to. So you can export to CSV or export, let's say, and then open it in Excel. That's still better to do that because the data is coming from that central source of information.
The time saved for people seemingly endlessly putting together Excel reports and becoming Excel jockeys and just building out Excel nonstop, with the usual number of errors in there. And then there's moving to the ease of having reliable, robust data that's refreshed on a daily or even more basis. And it's when I think people realize they can move from one to the other and they can have that structure and security and safety and confidence in that data, that's an incredible direction for somebody to go in.